What's up guys, Hatter here, and I'm finally revisiting this dynamic Dungeons & Dragons character sheet using some vanilla JavaScript, a little bit of HTML, and some very basic CSS. Today I thought we would go ahead and add our hit points, as well as the ability to heal and damage said hit points using some buttons, and while we're at it we can go ahead and add a short rest and long rest button. So let's hop in. You might notice first that since the last video, I have moved the player level from the central column to the left column. That's just to free up some room here where we're going to drop in all of our hit points and our death saving throws and all that good stuff. If you just straight up copy that block of HTML out of there, it's not going to affect any of your scripts over here because all of the ID and your the JavaScript function that it calls are all going to be the same. So it doesn't matter where in the sheet it is, as long as those attributes are still the same, you don't have to worry about it. It's going to always call those functions. Here's what we're looking at right now. I'm going to go ahead and use this space here underneath the armor class to drop in our hit points. So let's find that in our HTML. Now, as you know, I like to drop in a couple of line breaks. And we're going to add a little header in here. And let's go with something super descriptive, just so we don't lose it, like hit points. Now, underneath our hit points, we're going to use an element that we have not used yet, which is the span. Not spam, span. And what we're going to do with that is just use it as a label for our current hit points. So inside that span, go ahead and just add HP, little colon, little space in there between. And then we're going to go to a new line, but we don't necessarily have to because it's going to all show on a single line. So we're going to add in another input. This is going to be of type number. You always want to put in what type of input you are working with. And let's go ahead and give it our ID right away. Current HP. Something super descriptive, right? And then add another line break here. We're going to drop in a second input, and it's going to be a number as well. And the ID here is going to be max HP. So what that looks like down here is we've got a couple of inputs that have numbers that you can manipulate. Very exciting stuff, but trust me, we're getting there. Let's go ahead and we're going to add a little space, a little slash, and so then you kind of get this current hit points out of max hit points effect there. But let's see if we can get them all onto one line. I'm going to go ahead and add a new CSS class. We're going to just call it stat. You can call it whatever you want, really doesn't matter. But the key here is that we're going to set the width equal to something very specific. That way, no matter what the number is, it's going to restrict it on that line so that it is nice and narrow. So we're going to come up here to our new inputs, and we're going to add a class equal to stat. Let's just go ahead and copy that, paste it in there, and then, boom, look at that. Our hit points are this number out of this number. And we'll go ahead and add our functionality in there in just a moment. Okay, so now we're going to add our heal and damage buttons, and this is where the JavaScript is going to come into play because we're going to want to heal and damage our player at will, right? So let's go ahead and create another span, and again, it's because we want to create this all on one line. We don't want to have any line breaks in our formatting here. And in here, we're going to put damage. Help if I spell it right. And we can do a line break here, even though it's not going to show. We're going to put an input that is a type equal to number. Let's go ahead and give it that stat class so that it's nice and narrow. And I'm going to go ahead and give it an ID now, which is mod HP, because it's what we're going to modify our HP by. We are going to use the same value for whether we are healing or damaging. And I'll show you what I mean by that in just a moment. Again, we're going to add a second span. And we're going to call that heal. Let's take a look at what we're looking at. So right now, you've just got damage and heal on either side. Doesn't look very pretty. I think we can probably do better than that. What do you guys think? So let's go ahead and we're going to give these a class of button. And that should, in theory, add that sort of button look to them. Let's see how they look now. So it created a little bit of padding. I think that some of our button formatting from Bootstrap is missing, but that's okay. We can go ahead and add that to our CSS real quick. So for instance, if we do button, let's add a little bit of padding. Let's say 5 pixels. And we're going to do a border radius, which is going to round out those corners, make it look real smooth. And we'll set that to 5 pixels as well. See what it looks like. And if we're going to be extra cool with it, let's find where we left it here. We can do button danger for our damage and button success for our healing, which should give us a nice green and red look. So what do you think? Now we've got some buttons in there, and it's pretty obvious. One is to hurt you, one is to heal you. Let's reduce that padding a little bit because it is a little too much. Little too much. See if that cuts it down a bit. No, nothing. Maybe we should add the padding back in. Let's try like a 6 pixel, but if you ever want to override something from a library that you're working with, just go ahead and add that exclamation point important to it. Like that. So cut it down a little bit, but I think we could probably do better than that. I just want it to kind of match the input. Still looks huge to me. Well, I think we could probably live with that. Maybe if we set this to a vertical align middle. There we go. Then at least it lines up in the center there. It's not ideal, but I think that it looks a lot nicer. In fact, you know what? I have an idea. We're going to make all of this stuff in a new class called CenterMe. We're going to call it text-align center. Hopefully you can read all that, all these special new classes that we're creating here. So the stat class is going to be a width of 50 pixels and a vertical align middle. Our button class, we wanted to add that border radius of 5 pixels. And the CenterMe class, we want to set text-align equal to center here. And then what we're going to do is just wrap up each of these new sections in a div that is class equal to CenterMe. And we'll close it up down here. You probably see things breaking down there while I'm adding all of this good stuff. Sorry for the editing on the fly, as it were. The nice thing about adding divs like this, though, is that if you don't give them any particularly obtrusive classes, it's not going to break your formatting at all. So now we've got our hit points centered, our damage and heal buttons centered. Everything just looks a lot nicer. All right, now let's build some functionality into these buttons. What do you say? Let's go ahead and add a new JavaScript function. We'll call it something super descriptive like take damage, add our parentheses and our curly braces. And let's go ahead and add our other function, which is going to be, what do you say, heal HP? That's pretty descriptive, right? Now, where do you think we're going to add these function calls? Perhaps over here in these buttons. We'll add an attribute to these spans called onClick, take damage. You don't have to do the camel case thing, but I do it out of habit. On the heal, we're going to say, help if I spell it right, onClick equal to heal HP. And what we're going to end up doing is we're going to end up calling that input, the number in the center of those buttons. So that way you can say, oh, I want to heal 5 points or I want to damage 5 points. If that makes sense. All right. So taking damage is always a little easier than healing it. So let's go ahead and create some variables in here. We're going to say variable, we'll call it the amount, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to go get that value that is in the input that's sitting in between the buttons. So we're going to hit document.getElementById. If you've been following along with me, always remember lowercase g, uppercase everything else. So document getElementById, in parentheses and quotes, we're going to look at the HP modifier. So mod HP dot value. Then we're going to need to get our current hit points. So var current HP set equal to document. And if you're terrible at spelling as I am, then you might want to copy and paste these things so that you don't make as many mistakes as I do. Current HP, which is our number up here, as you recall. Don't forget to add dot value, semicolon. Then we're going to say, let's wrap everything up in an if statement, right? So we're going to say if, and so every time this function gets called, it's going to, set the variables, but it's not going to run anything unless it is passed through this if statement. So we'll need some second parentheses here. If our current HP minus the amount is less than, or no, if it's greater than or equal to 0. No, we want it to just be greater than 0. No, we'll say greater than or equal to. That makes sense. Sorry. Doing a little bit of math in my head and losing the plot a little bit. Add some curly braces. So basically what we're saying is if the current HP minus the amount that you're damaging it by is going to be greater than 0, then what we're going to do is say document dot get element by ID. In case you're not tired of the getter, and we'll say current HP dot value. We're going to set that equal to whatever that amount is, because it is obviously greater than 0, right? Now, if that number is less than 0, we're going to add that else statement, and we're going to say document.get get element by ID current element value equal, paste that in there, and we're just going to say that it's equal to 0. So that way, if the amount is still greater than 0, then we'll make it that amount, but if it's less than 0, we'll just set it to 0, because you can't go below 0 hit points, right? So let's save it up and give it a try. Let's say we've got 35 hit points, and we want to damage them by 30. There we go. Easy as that. Now let's try and damage it again. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. See? So that way we can't go below 0, but we can deal damage accordingly. Damage it by 3. By 3 again, and goes down to 0. Awesome, right? That is the easy one. Now let's hop into our healing function. So we're going to set var amount. You know what? Let's just go ahead and copy the var amount statement from our previous function, because it's going to be the same thing. Then we're going to have to get our current HP as well. Let's copy that one and paste it down there. And then after that, we are actually, if we're going to heal our HP, we are going to have to set our max HP. So go ahead and replace current with max, because we don't want to be able to heal more than our character's max HP, right? So we're going to say if, again, we have to wrap it all in an if statement. If our current, forgot that second set of parentheses, if current HP added to the amount is greater than, less than. So less than or equal to max HP, then we're going to go ahead and execute this bit of code. We'll say document get element by ID current HP equals. Now you see I just copy and pasted this. We're just going to replace that minus sign with a plus. Now there is in fact a problem here, and let's take a look at what it is. Let's save it up. Let's say, for instance, you've got 20 hit points, and you've got 19 hit points out of that 20, and you're going to heal 4 hit points. Not working, right? Oh, well, let's try doing it this way. Let's go ahead and set it to less than, because we didn't put our else statement in there. So let's say like 12, and we're going to heal 4. Still not working. That is because when you are adding in JavaScript, it treats these numbers as if they are strings. And so it's trying to add 12 plus 4, not as numbers, but as strings. So it wants to say 124 instead of just 16, right? So we're going to have to go back to our old friend, the parse integer method. So let's go ahead and set our variables equal to parse int. Wrap that up in parentheses. Parse int on max HP as well. make sure to wrap that up in the closing parentheses. And let's just go ahead and do the amount as well, just in case. And you know what? Wasn't even calling the function because I forgot my parentheses here. So make sure you add your parentheses and semicolon whenever you are calling a function in the HTML. Now let's give this a try. If we have 20 hit points, 14 on the board, and we want to heal 4, bumps us up to 18. It will not let us heal because we have not added our else statement. So let's drop in else. We're going to set our document.getElementById current HP equal to what? The max HP variable, right? So let's save that up. Set our hit points to 20. We'll go 18 out of 20, and we're going to try and heal 4 points. There you go. We heal up to 20 and no more. Damage only by increments of 4. Heal by increments of 6. So it really is that easy to do our damage and healing. So let's go ahead and hop into something a little more challenging. First, I'm going to get rid of some of these line breaks because it's starting to look a little crowded down there. See if, there we go. That looks a little tighter, a little more clean. We can go ahead and close up these functions because we are all set with those. Let's go ahead and add another centered div. So we'll do our div class equal to center me. Like I said, always be as descriptive as possible with your naming conventions, and you'll never go wrong. Let's add that line break in there. And what we're going to do here is add in our hit dice. So, as we've been doing, in order to keep things on single lines, let's go ahead and add a span in there, and we're going to call this one hit dice. Add a little colon there. And then on the outside of the span, we're going to add another input. We'll make that a stat class as well so that it's nice and small. We're going to set the ID of that to, again, something descriptive like hit dice. We can even go ahead and set it to type equals number. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add another one of those little slash marks. And we'll do, this is actually where we're going to get a little crazy. Because on the one hand, we could just create another number field, right? So like if, for instance, what I'm basically trying to create here is oh, you have this many hit dice of this type, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to say 1 hit die, and rather than using a number field, we're going to use a select. That is something that we haven't played with yet in this particular tutorial series. So go ahead and create a field there called select, and we're going to give it an ID equal to hit die, because it's going to be the type of die. And then within that select, go ahead and create an option. And we'll put in a 4. And we can probably just go ahead and copy that. Paste it in. Didn't get all of it. That's okay. We'll change that one to a 6. And for those clever folks in the audience, you can tell that what I'm doing is adding our dice types. So we've got our 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. And I don't know of any D&D classes that have a hit die of a D20, but we're going to go ahead and add it in there anyway. So now you can select your hit die from the list of approved die instead of just typing in any number you want. And you know what? Now that I'm looking at it, it actually really bothers me that the select box is smaller than our input box. So what we're going to do over here is we're going to add some more CSS styling. We're not going to create any extra classes or anything like that. We are just going to target any of these selects. Let's go ahead and add a padding of 5 pixels. I think that's what the others are. And we're going to set a minimum width of 50 pixels because that's what our stats are. 5 looks like a little too big. Let's drop it down to 4. Maybe 3. Let's bump it back up to 4 and then add that vertical align. Sorry, I am so anal about these things, but I want it to look good, right? So there you go. Now it looks like the windows are about the same. And I mean, just for comparison's sake, like if you go from that to that, looks so much better. So again, with the selects, we just added a bit of padding. We set a minimum width so that it's equal to the maximum width of the hit dice, and we aligned it to the center vertically. Let's go ahead and save all that up. Now, that's not even getting into the fun stuff, which is creating some buttons. Let's set these equal to some classes. We're going to go class of button, and let's call the first one button info. Again, this is a pre-built-in class for Bootstrap, which again, you always want to import that Bootstrap library. It just makes the framework just makes formatting so much easier than having to write out all that CSS yourself. And what we're going to call this button is short rest. Now let's go ahead and instantiate our functions. On click, we're going to want to trigger the short rest function, which we haven't created yet, but again, you want to add that stuff in early. Let's take a look at what we have down there. Ooh, actually might need to add a little line break. Better add a second one, just to create some space. There we go. And then let's just go ahead and copy that. And we'll paste it again on the next line. This one we are going to rename long rest. Be sure to rename both the function and the actual button. And let's go ahead and change it to a button success. That way we get that green. So short rest is blue, long rest is green. Pretty cool, right? Let's go ahead and add some functionality to that. Save it up. Now I can already tell you that the easier function to write is going to be the long rest. The reason for that is that we are not going to have to deal with hit dice. All we are going to do is set our HP to maximum and reset our hit dice. Now these are things that are going to get triggered by other effects as well, so we might not necessarily want to have them isolated within the long rest function. So go ahead and create a function outside of that, and we're going to go ahead and just call it reset HP. And all we're going to do with that is say document.get element by ID. We're going to find that current HP dot value. and we're going to set it equal to, let's just go ahead and copy that section right there, paste it in, but we are going to set it equal to whatever our max HP is. Add a semicolon to the end of that. Save that up, and let's say, for instance, we have 35 is our maximum HP, 20 is our current HP. What are we missing here? Oh, duh. We have our reset HP, but I didn't call it from our other function. So go ahead and add reset HP into your long rest. And now, if you set your max HP to 35, your current HP to 20, long rest, and you max out your HP. So some other times that we might call that function are when we change levels. When you level up, you get to reset your HP. So let's go ahead and call that in level change as well. Now, another thing that you get to reset on a level change is you get to recover all of your hit dice. So let's go ahead and create another function called reset hit dice. And as you know, we want, it would help if I spell it right. We want our get element by ID. And this is going to be our total number of hit dice, not our hit die. As you know, the hit dice are determined by your level, and your hit die is determined by your class. So we're going to affect the hit dice on this one. And we're going to go ahead and set that value equal to our document dot get element by ID. And if you remember, way back in the day, we did a little thing called the player level. Semicolon there. Make sure that I called the right value there. Yep, ID, player level, right there. So on level change, you are going to reset your HP. You're going to reset your hit dice. And during a long rest, you are also going to reset hit dice. And that is how easy it is to have a long rest. So let's save it all up. When you change your player level, boom, there you go. You get your hit dice equal to your player level. And let's say you have 35 max hit points, 20 currently, and you only have one of your three hit dice available to you, and you take a long rest, boom, you recover all your hit dice and all your HP. We'll talk about spell slots later on. So that covers our long rest. What about our short rest? So let's go underneath the long rest and create another function here. This one's going to be a little more complicated, but if you've hung with me this far, then you know it's going to be worth it. So let's set up some variables at first. We'll say variable current dice, and we're going to set that equal to, just in case, we're going to do a parse int, as you know I like to do, which converts a string into a number. And we are going to say document dot get element by ID. I told you, you're never going to get tired of hearing that one. And what we're looking for is those hit dice, not the hit die, but the hit dice. That's your current number of dice that you have available to you. And we're going to get the value of that, add a semicolon outside of all those parentheses, and move on. Now we're only going to allow the player to take a short rest, or more specifically, mechanically, you're only going to be able to take a short rest if you have hit dice to spend, right? Otherwise, you're not going to be able to recover anything. So, if our current dice are greater than 0, we're going to set up some variables. No, we're going to run this little function here. We're going to say our current HP, and this is all stuff that, you know, we've been doing for our long rest and for healing and for taking damage, but we're just going to build in a little bit of a random function for actually rolling those hit dice. So our current HP, let's go ahead and copy this so I don't screw anything up. As you know, I am prone to typos when I'm moving too fast. And we're going to change hit dice to current HP. Stretch this out a little bit so we can see exactly what we're looking at. Skip a line and go variable max HP, because we don't want you to be able to heal greater than your max HP during a short rest. Paste that in there and replace current with max. And then we're going to set up, what should we call this one? Let's call this max die, because this is going to be the maximum value that you can roll on your hit die. And what that's going to be is the actual hit die. So obviously, if you get a random number between 1 and 4, which is, you know, that would be your hit die, you don't want to go above 4. So this one, as opposed to hit dice, is going to be hit die. Now, we're going to wrap everything up in another if statement. If, drop in our parentheses, let's add in a second set of parentheses because we're going to do a little math equation here. So if our current HP plus, oh, you know what? All right. Now we're going to generate a random number. That is going to be our dice roll. Let's call it our hit die roll. And we will go with a built-in JavaScript function, math.floor. That just rounds down from the nearest number here. And then we'll do math.random. And what we want to multiply that by is the rounded down version of math.floor of the highest value that we can get on the die, which is our max die. I know this all sounds a little confusing, but trust me, it's going to work. So we want to wrap up our healing function in another if statement, right? Same way we did with our heal HP and take damage, because we don't want to heal more than our max HP. So we're going to do a double parentheses here because we're using a little bit of a math equation. We're going to say if our current HP plus the random dice roll that we just got, or hit die roll, if that is less than or equal to our max HP, then we are going to do our little curly braces there. Set our, here, I'm just going to go ahead and copy it out of here. Our document.getElementById, current HP.value. we're going to set that equal to that exact number. So current HP plus hit die roll. Wrap it up in a semicolon. And then we're going to say, or else, if it is greater than the max HP, then we are just going to say our document.getCurrentElementById current HP value, set it equal to our max HP. I don't know why I pasted that in there. Ignore that. And now, no matter what we are going to want to do after we run that is we're going to say whatever our current dice are. We're going to say document.getElementById hit dice value equals current dice minus 1. Because we want to subtract a hit die every time we take a short rest. You didn't see the air quotes, but I did them. So let's save all that up and see if all of this code does what we want it to. So let's say, for example, we've got 35 hit points. 20 out of 35 hit points. Let's say we've got 2 hit dice. And we go to take a we'll say we have a D8, right? Or a fighter class or something like that. A martial class. And we take a short rest. We should expect our HP to increase by 1 D8 roll and our hit dice to drop by 1. And there we go. We got 4 points and our hit dice dropped by 1. Let's take another one. So we can spend those hit dice by clicking short rest. Even if we only take, for instance, 1 short rest, we are actually burning those hit dice by hitting the short rest button. Now you see I can't actually take any more short rests once we've burned our dice. But let's say we level up. Boom. HP recovered, hit dice recovered. Let's maybe knock some hit points down and short rest it, long rest it, and we get our hit dice back. All right, that's about it for today. We're finally building some functionality into our character sheet, such as the ability to track our hit points, the ability to track our HP, the ability to deal damage, the ability to heal damage. We can take some short rests. We can take some long rests. And I think we're starting to get a little bit more use out of it. Now, unfortunately, all this functionality is going to require you to be able to save your form data, which is a feature that we're going to add eventually. But I think next time we're probably going to focus on adding attacks. We're going to add some spell slots and the ability to, add attack rolls. If you're digging this series so far, please like this video, subscribe to the channel. Let me know down in the comments below what other features you want me to add to this character sheet. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will catch you later.